Stories, you just got to talk about it in black and white. Dateline, September 2025. Russian drones are on the march, crossing over the Polish border as allied forces in Europe ready their response. Here at home, Chancellor Trump springs into action, performing his terrifying war dance. Sorry, ladies, he's swollen.
But there was one performance this year that stunned me. There was nothing good about it, but it was effective and it did its job. It made its intended audience laugh. When the person asking to sit in the most respected seat in our country imitated a disabled reporter, someone he outranked in privilege, power, and the capacity.
StephenColbert and Meryl Streep bring entirely different weapons to their roast of Donald Trump, and together, they're devastating. Colbert wields razor-sharp wit, dissecting with relentless precision until the bluster collapses under its own weight. Streep counters with elegance honed into steel, her quiet authority cutting deeper than any raised voice ever could. Side by side, they strip away Trump's carefully crafted self-image, exposing not strength but fragility. What's left isn't victory, but parody, a cautionary spectacle of ego stretched to the point of absurdity.
Today, I gotta say this, today Donald Trump's horoscope should have warned him he'd have a surprise run-in with a long-lost pervert, because the story of his disturbing friendship with Jeffrey Epstein keeps getting more. Earlier this summer, the Wall Street Journal reported that back in 2003, Trump contributed to a book for Epstein's 50th birthday, and the letter he wrote was a Picasso.
If his catastrophic instinct to retaliate doesn't lead us to nuclear winter, we will have much to thank this president for, because he will have woken us up to how fragile freedom.
Colbert opens by casting Trump's career as a marathon of bloopers dressed up as triumphs. From bankrupt casinos to branding flops, each so-called milestone resembles an extended punchline rather than a legacy. In Colbert's telling, Trump's greatest wins double as exhibits of chaos. He paints the presidency as the ultimate miscasting, an illusionist suddenly expected to produce reality. The result is comedy at its sharpest, but also tragedy on a national scale.
Thankfully, with Europe on the brink of war, America has a statesman in office who can reassure the world with a steady hand and calming words. Today he posted, "What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go." I can't believe Russia would dare take an aggressive action like this after Trump laid down a clear...
Streep brings gravitas by treating Trump as if he were a character under study. Her critique is quiet but piercing, dismantling him with surgical precision. She highlights the tells, the insecurity fueling constant self-promotion, the desperation behind grandiose gestures, the emptiness buried beneath his endless stream of superlatives. In her view, Trump is less a leader than a caricature lost in his own script. Her delivery exposes the absurdity of mistaking performance for governance. For in her world, performance is art, but in his, it became a survival tactic.
It broke my heart when I saw it, and I still can't get it out of my head because it wasn't in a movie. It was real life. And this instinct to humiliate by someone powerful, it filters down into everybody's life because it kind of gives permission for other people to do the same thing. Disrespect invites disrespect. Violence incites violence. When the powerful use their position to bully others, we all lose. And we have to remind each other of the privilege and the responsibility.
Colbert turns to Trump's fractured relationship with truth, noting how fact-checkers practically became a cottage industry during his presidency, scrambling to keep pace with the distortions. He ridicules Trump's habit of spinning entire narratives, likening it to a novelist who skips editing and releases rough drafts as policy. The humor cuts deep. Trump didn't just bend facts to fit his arguments. He built a world where facts bent to his ego. Colbert skewers this endless improvisation, exposing how a presidency propped up by exaggeration inevitably collapses under the weight of reality.
There's one bit of good news, and strangely, it comes from Washington, D.C., because today, right? Today marks the end of Trump's executive order taking control of the city. This means the police force is returned to the city's hands, and just in time, because Trump's hands have begun to smell a little gamey. Trump claims his 30-day fascist makeover reduced crime by...
Streep builds on this by pointing out how Trump's rhetoric is stripped of nuance, leaning on volume and repetition in place of depth. She contrasts it with the demands of a true actor: layered emotion, truth, and contradiction. Trump, she argues, delivers the opposite: a one-note performance shouted through a microphone. She exposes the tragic comedy of a man who confuses noise with power and presence with gravitas. Her critique cuts deep because it comes from a mastery of performance, and by those standards, Trump's stagecraft crumbles.
So it came down to her. She was one of the only women who was in business at that time, and she ran the paper only because she inherited it.
It's funny because I feel like if this movie had come out 2 years ago, our reaction would be, oh, it's unthinkable that a newspaper wouldn't print this information because the president told them not to. But now it doesn't seem so unthinkable anymore. And is that a total coincidence that this movie came out now and was made during this administration?
Well, I think the assault on the press and freedom of the press and the attempt to, by government to shut down a story is something that's risen over and over again since, Brave New World. But
since this weekend.
Colbert pivots to Trump's public appearances, framing the rallies as traveling comedy specials, recycled, stretched, and embellished until they slipped into parody. The crowds weren't getting strategy or solutions, he quips, but the verbal equivalent of reheated leftovers. The punchline: Trump turned into a touring act addicted to applause, mistaking cheers for policy endorsements. Colbert nails the joke by casting him as a comedian who doesn't realize he's the punchline. Streep follows by stripping away the spectacle. She asks what remains when the shouting stops: no lights, no sound, just the fear of silence. For her, the rallies reveal not strength but fragility. Trump's constant need for validation mirrors the insecurity of an actor who can't trust the performance without audience approval. A man desperate to be seen, she argues, is never secure in his power. Colbert closes by targeting Trump's contradictions, mocking his ability to reverse positions overnight. It wasn't political strategy, he says, but bad improv where the actor forgets the setup. Each denial, reversal, and rebrand becomes fodder for his humor, exposing the irony of a man who built his image on certainty but governed through inconsistency.
According to the Journal's reporting, his note was framed by a hand-drawn outline of a naked woman and featured what appeared to be the future president's signature as a squiggly Donald below her waist, mimicking pubic hair. But wait, there's more. The note read in part, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful sequel."
Streep uses her quiet authority to dismantle Trump's illusion of gravitas. She contrasts his bluster with true presence, the ability to command attention through authenticity rather than spectacle. Trump, she argues, lacks that grounding. He leans on overstatement, mistaking force for persuasion. Her roast lands precisely because she doesn't need to shout. She simply lets the emptiness of his performance expose itself. Colbert sharpens the attack by skewering Trump's obsession with legacy. He mocks the fantasy of statues, airports, and history books honoring his name, and instead paints a future where students flip to a chapter less about achievement than calamity. The comedy is brutal. Trump dreamed of grandeur but secured ridicule. For Colbert, the only monument he leaves behind is a towering edifice of chaos. Streep presses further, noting that history remembers substance, not spectacle. Trump mistook visibility for permanence, failing to see that the brightest flames burn out the fastest. His desperation to carve himself into the record has made him unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. She delivers the final line with chilling inevitability. History does not preserve noise, it preserves meaning. And Trump's noise will fade.
Donald Trump got the Meryl Streep treatment this week. Not necessarily a good thing. Take a look. Monday, she put on a spray tan, a belly of a sort, and a big red tie to deliver a Trump impression.
Roger, my Shakespeare, and the women you will bow with the wife of the British.
Colbert dives into Trump's governing style, portraying it as a reality show stretched into public office. Every crisis became a cliffhanger, every scandal a plot twist, every press briefing a teaser for the next episode. But unlike television, the stakes were real. Colbert skewers the absurdity of running a government like entertainment, mocking the confusion of spectacle with stability. For Streep, this is the ultimate tragedy, a man cast in history's greatest role who insisted on playing it like a reality star. Together, they dismantle Trump's fixation on appearing strong. Colbert points out that the louder the declarations of toughness, the weaker the reality. Each boast of dominance was really a tell of insecurity. Streep amplifies the critique with surgical precision, reminding us that true strength doesn't advertise itself. Trump's endless self-promotion, she argues, reveals not confidence but the fear of being exposed. The combined attack is merciless because it unmasks the fragility behind the facade.
On Friday, Donald Trump signed an executive order to rebrand the Defense Department as the Department of War. Ooh, a rebrand. You know what that means. The Pentagon is getting bangs. It's just fresh.
Colbert takes one final swing at Trump's endless quest for relevance. Even after leaving the spotlight, he notes, Trump clings to every microphone as though silence itself would erase him. The image is bleakly comic, a man addicted to attention, unable to exit the stage with grace. Colbert's humor lands because it captures the desperation of someone who once held the highest office yet cannot stomach the void of irrelevance. Streep closes with devastating calm. The story isn't finished, she observes, because Trump refuses to let it end. Each attempt to claw back relevance only fuels the comedy, every grasp for recognition writing the next scene. The roast, she suggests, doesn't need a final line. Trump supplies new material on his own. The performance sustains itself, and history will keep recording every act until the curtain at last comes down.
Did everything and sued the Wall Street Journal for $20 billion, calling the letter, you guys were a little late. Now, calling the letter non-existent. Turns out existent, because yesterday, the House Oversight Committee released it, and whoops-a-puby. That sure as hell looks legit. It's directly from the Jeffrey Epstein estate. It's exactly what the Wall Street Journal reported, and the signature identically matches a bunch of ones from the same era. And you know what they say, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, that duck should not be allowed within 300 yards of a...
Colbert circles back to Trump's fixation on appearances, tearing into the obsession with crowd sizes, inflated attendance claims, and the endless photo ops staged to project popularity. He jokes that Trump measured legitimacy not by policy or results, but by how tightly people were packed into an arena. The absurdity writes the comedy, a presidency judged by head counts instead of outcomes. Colbert lands the roast by casting him as a carnival barker who mistakes foot traffic for history. Streep builds on the point, reflecting that true influence never needs constant reminders. The tragedy, she suggests, is that Trump confused nostalgia with relevance, never realizing that repetition only underscored his creative bankruptcy. Colbert then skewers Trump's addiction to superlatives. Everything was the best, the biggest, the most. He mocks the verbal inflation as if Trump were running a clearance sale where every adjective had to be supersized. The punchline is brutal. When every achievement is the greatest in history, none of them carry meaning. Colbert shows how the bravado collapsed under its own weight, leaving behind nothing but the hollow echo of boasts.